Dean Matthew made lofty claims about what my sermon will do. He did the same thing at 9. The answer to the universe, creation, everything is 42 for those who have ears to hear. Good. My people are here. Good. The answer is 42, and if you don't know what that means, ask someone who chuckled near you. Good, but I guess that's not a very satisfying sermon, so I'll try something else. Which is that when we think about Christmas, we think about babies. And we particularly think about a particular baby. And of course we would, because Matthew and Luke tell these long, elaborate stories about Mary, who had to travel a long distance with Joseph to give birth to a child. And I think we also think about babies at Christmas, because babies, it's so easy to romanticize babies, isn't it? So easy to reflect on them. Don't worry, parents, you're coming back. It's so easy to reflect on them and to feel that sense of warmth. Brings back, I think, memories for us about Christmases past. So we think about babies at Christmas, but John's gospel, as you heard, gives this baby a whole backdrop. That this baby is not just a baby, of course, but this baby is the Word of God, which isn't like God's messenger or like God's agent. The Word was God Himself. That this baby, through this baby all things were made, and not one thing came into being except through Him. That what came into the world through Him was light and the life of all people, and the darkness did not overcome it. That this baby becomes the enfleshment and the embodiment of God's logos, the God's inner wisdom, the creator of all that is. We call this mystery the Incarnation. Now, when we talk about that, it puts a lot of pressure on this kid. Don't you think? And so the Incarnation is not meant to be, wow, this baby's so special. The Incarnation is so much more richer than that. It starts with the idea that God became fully human, which is to say that God experienced in the person of Jesus all the amazing, wonderful things we like to think about what it means to be human. He experienced love and connection and success and all those wonderful things that we like to think about. But when we talk about being fully human, I think babies are a great example of that. Because, here you go, parents, the babies, as much as we wax and wane over them, they come with a lot. They come with a lot, don't they? No? No one knows? Oh yeah, there we go. Babies come with sleepless nights. Babies come with the anxiety of, am I doing it right? Am I raising the child right? Babies come with the even bigger anxiety of, I know I messed up and there's nothing I can do about it. Ugh. The full human experience means that God took on not just all the great and wonderful things about what it is to be a human, but that God in the person of Jesus walked through and knows all that stuff you'd rather not be there. Meaning, not your personal private lives, but meaning like, God knows what it is to have his heart completely broken and shattered, and yet has to get up the next day and do it all again. God knows the pain and the anguish of dreams that you had longed for and are now crushed. God knows all the guilt, the shame, and the feelings of despair and hopelessness. God knows it all, and doesn't just know it as like a passive voyeur who's like watching a soap opera on TV, but God knows it as one who has come and lived among us, who knows it in his own heart and in his own flesh. And what comes with that is this recognition that the Incarnation reminds us that no matter what painful thing you have lived through or are currently living through, no matter what burden you carry, the angst, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the self-questioning, that all of it, no matter how alone you felt in it, you are not alone, because the Holy One, the sacred, the divine, lived and held it and experienced it too. Jesus might have never picked up an iPhone, but Jesus certainly knows what it is to feel distraction and envy and jealousy, to desire to just escape from it all because it all just becomes too much sometimes. That God knows these parts of ourselves because God has them etched into God's own heart and body and soul. The Incarnation reminds us that just as Jesus came to us in the person of this baby, that sacred potential, that sacredness that lies in all these human experiences, the way in which the divine holds it all and has moved through it all, also extends to the fact that Christ comes to you again and again through human relationships, through other people. It's like what we say in our baptismal covenant, that we seek and serve Christ in all persons. The Incarnation is this reminder to us that we don't find God somewhere else, out there, but that we find God here, in your midst, living among you, in the relationships you build and engage with, the relationships built out of love and care. That we find Christ, as much as we find Christ as a babe lying in the manger, we may just as well find Christ in the barista at the coffee shop, or in the banker at the teller at the bank, in your spouse who holds you when you've just gone through hell, in the coworker who takes the pity on you or the compassion on you, that gives you a break, takes that assignment for you, in your kid who looks up to you and is just beaming, whether they're a little kid or an adult kid, with their joy that you get to be their parent. We find and encounter Christ not somewhere else, but right here in our midst, in the relationships we build and have with one another. Which, of course, then means that the Incarnation reminds you that you are deeply sacred, that you will find God and the holy and the divine in your being and soul and personhood. In the Gospel of John that we read, it said that the Word became flesh, all the things, and to all those who believed in the Word, who received the Word and believed in His name, that's how it says it, the Word gave you power to become children of God. Now, if you've made it to church the Sunday after Christmas, I think you received Him. I think you might believe in His name. I think you passed the test. You did it. You don't have to worry about that anymore. And so that means that to you, God has given the power to become children of God. And I love that word becoming, because for me, I don't always feel like a child of God. You can ask my daughter later, she's in the nursery at the moment, you can ask my daughter later, how did Dad do with putting together Christmas presents yesterday? Not great. I wasn't my best self, right? I wasn't a child of God then, but I love, thank you, the trickling people, I love it. But that word becoming reminds us, no matter what you become, whether you're becoming a great violinist, or you're becoming a teacher, or you're becoming a priest, or whatever, the process of becoming is not a straight line. It is full of setbacks and progress and successes, but also failures and all the struggle that is becoming, that Christ came so that you might become children of God. And so that sacred presence, the Incarnation reminds us that that sacred holiness isn't just in all of the life experiences, isn't in all the other people, it is also in you. That you are deeply sacred. That you carry in you that presence of Christ to the world and to others. That you have the invitation in that becoming process of revealing and sharing and acting in ways that proclaim that love to a very hurting and broken world. And at the end of the day, the Incarnation is not just a bunch of lofty ideas. In fact, it is the opposite of that. The Incarnation is enfleshed, embodied, concreteness. It's getting out of your head and getting into your heart. And so I will conclude with a question. The Incarnation is truly a question. How are you living your life to honor the sacred in the moment, in one another, and in yourself?